footsteps of their noble ancestors. The second is to ensure that people can gain ultimate, eternal peace. Such scriptures as the Ramayana, the Bible, the Quran, and so on deal with both these aspects. But because of the material viewpoints held by most people, they tend to adhere only to those that are of immediate social use. In the spiritual texts also, we find many references to useful social practices, confirming their relevance. Therefore, the great sage, Veda Vyas, while writing the Mahabharata, the epic within which the Gita is an inherent part, had clearly referred to social as well as spiritual matters. However, in the Gita itself, there is not a single verse that is concerned with the sustenance of physical life or the propagation of social or religious conventions, rites, or customs. This was done to ensure that people should not mix up dogmas into something which is meant for universal and timeless well-being. This divine Gita is therefore presented exclusively in terms of timeless spiritual roots and concepts.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Yatharth Geeta, Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Chapter 2. Curiosity about action. In the nature of a preface, Chapter 1 presents the seeker's doubts and confusions. The participants in the war include all of the Kaurav and Pandav, but Arjuna alone is subject to misgivings. However, Arjuna is the very embodiment of devotion as a wayfarer on the path of spiritual quest. It is his love for God that inspires him to get ready for the war between matter and spirit. The initial stage is thus of love, of adoration. My revered teacher used to say, "Believe that adoration of the Supreme Spirit has commenced when, even while one is leading the life of a householder, there are signs of weariness and tears, and sentiment so powerful that it chokes the throat." Manifold strands are entwined in love of dharma, precept, restraint, pious association, and sentiment. In the first stage of spiritual seeking, attachment to the family looms as an obstacle. At the outset, everyone wishes to achieve the ultimate reality, but the worshipper is overtaken by despair when he realizes that after going a certain length of the way, he will have to sever all his ties of attachment to the family. So he learns to be contented with whatever customs he had followed earlier. He even quotes prevailing customs to justify his infatuation, just as Arjuna does when he insists that family rites are Sanatan Dharma. The war will cause the extinction of the Sanatan Dharma itself, and along with that, destruction of families and loss of civilized ways. Far from being an independent view of Arjuna, his ideas only reflect some inherited creeds he had acquired earlier before approaching an accomplished teacher such as Krishna. Mired in these traditions, men devise numerous religions, sects, groups small and large, and castes beyond reckoning. Some press the nose, while others pierce their ears, while yet others lose their dharma because they are touched by someone, or because their food and drink are defiled. Is it just to blame the so-called untouchables or non-Hindus for this state of affairs? By no means. The blame should rather be apportioned among those who propagate delusions in the name of Dharma. As for us who listen to them, we are blind victims of what are but misguided customs, and so we too have to bear part of the blame. In Mahatma Buddha's time, there was a sect called Kesh Kambal, the members of which regarded the practice of growing hair so that it could be used like a blanket as a standard of perfection. There have been some who thought it pious to live like cows, while others have lived and conducted themselves in the manner of dogs. But all these were only stupid customs that have nothing to do with awareness of God. There were schisms and foolish customs in the past, and they are with us even today. There were also divisions and stupid customs in Krishna's time, and Arjuna is a victim of some of them. This is seen from his 4 arguments, namely, that war destroys the eternal Sanatan Dharma, and that it produces Varn Sankar, an unholy intermingling of disparate classes and ways of life. Obsequial offering to deceased ancestors will cease, and we shall, by being engaged in destroying our race, invite great curses on us. Thereupon Yogeshwar Krishna speaks to him.
तथा कृपयाविष्टम् अश्रुपूर्णाकुलेक्षणम् विषीदन्तमिदं वाक्यम् उवाच मधुसूदनः.
Sanjay said, "To him, Arjuna, whose eyes were brimming with tears of grief because he was overcome by pity, Madhusudan spoke thus." To Arjuna, his eyes filled with tears of sorrow and profound agitation, Madhusudan, the destroyer of arrogance, speaks.
कुतस्त्वाकश्मलमिदं विषमे समुपस्थितम् अनार्यजुष्टमस्वर्ग्यम् अकीर्तिकरमर्जुन.
The Lord said, "From what cause, O Arjuna, does this unmanly, un-Arjun-like, heaven-barring, and shameful despair come over you at this perilous spot?" Madhusudan, Krishna, uses the term Visham for the place where Arjuna and he are at that time. Besides meaning difficult or dangerous, the word also means unique or unequaled. So Krishna really wishes to know that which has caused spiritual ignorance, agyan, in Arjuna in this unusual, unparalleled setting. The setting is one the like of which can be found nowhere else in the entire world, because it is the sphere of spiritual striving towards an unworldly, celestial goal. In such a universal and undisputed setting, how has spiritual ignorance come over Arjuna? Why does Krishna call Arjuna's views spiritual ignorance? Has Arjuna not said categorically that it is his heartfelt wish to defend Sanatan Dharma? Is it spiritual ignorance to be resolved, body and soul, to protect what Arjuna believes to be the immutable, eternal Dharma? According to Krishna, it is so, for it has not been the practice of those who truly deserve to be called men. Neither does it provide access to heaven. It is also not conducive to glory. The one who keeps firmly to the path of righteousness is an Arya. In Hindu scriptures, instead of referring to any race or stock, Arya denotes an exceptionally cultivated man who adheres scrupulously to Dharma. If dying for one's family were not an instance of ignorance, Krishna adds, sages would have practiced it. Had family traditions been the ultimate reality, they would have been used as a ladder for climbing up to heaven and salvation. When Mira sang her songs of divine adoration, people declared her insane, and her mother-in-law condemned her as a destroyer of the family. But no one today remembers the mother-in-law for shedding copious tears of concern about the well-being of her family and safety of its honor, while the whole world cherishes the memory of Mira. After all, how long can we remember the man who is concerned only about his family? Is it not evident, then, that customs which bring neither glory nor sublime happiness, and which have at no time been accepted by an Arya, a man of Dharma, must be a kind of ignorance? Krishna says to Arjuna,
क्लैव्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदयदौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप.
Don't give in, O Parth, to unmanliness, for it does not become you. So, O Parantap, stand up and drive away this disgraceful weakness of your heart. Krishna exhorts Arjuna not to yield to impotence. Klebhyam. Is Arjuna impotent, lacking in virility? Are we virile men? An impotent man is one who is devoid of manliness. All of us, according to our wisdom, do what we believe to be manly. A peasant who sweats day and night in his fields tries to prove his manliness by his labor. Some demonstrate their manliness in commerce, and yet others try to prove that they are real men by abusing their powers. Ironically, however, even after this lifelong display of manliness, we depart but empty-handed at the end. Is it not obvious, then, that all this is not true manliness? True manliness is self-knowledge, awareness of the soul and its divine origin. To cite yet another example from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Gargi tells Yajnavalkya that a man, though endowed with sexual prowess, is yet unmanly if he has no awareness of the embodied soul. This self is the real man, Purush, radiant and unmanifest. The endeavor to know this self is true manliness, Paurush. It is because of this that Krishna asks Arjuna not to surrender to impotence. It is unworthy of him. He is a scorcher, a formidable vanquisher of foes, so he ought to reject his groveling feebleness and stand up for battle. He should give up his social attachments, for they are mere frailties. At this, Arjuna raises his third question.
Katham bhishmamaham sankhye dronam cha madhusudana ishubhi pratiyotsyami pujarha varisudana.
Arjuna said, How, O Madhusudan, slayer of enemies, shall I shoot arrows in the battle against men like Bhishma and Drona, who deserve only my honor? Arjuna addresses Krishna as Madhusudan, destroyer of the demon of ego, and wants to know from him how he can fight with his grandsire Bhishma and teacher Drona. Both are deserving of only reverence. Dual conduct, as we have seen, is Dronacharya, the conduct that arises from the feeling that God is separate from us and we are separate from Him. But the consciousness of this duality is also the initial urge for spiritual accomplishment. And then there is Bhishma, the very image of delusion. So long as we stray from the right path and are under the sway of delusion, children, family, and kinsmen all appear as our own. The feeling that they belong to me, that they are mine, is the medium through which delusion works. The deluded man regards them as worthy of worship and clings to them, for that one is father, the other one grandfather, and still another the teacher who has taught him. But after spiritual attainment, there is neither teacher nor pupil, and the self, who has gained awareness of the essence, of the Supreme Spirit, is left all alone. When the self is absorbed in God, neither is the teacher a preceptor nor the disciple a receptacle. This is the state of the most exalted excellence. After assimilating the teacher's excellence, the disciple shares it, and the distinction between the teacher and the pupil is obliterated. Krishna says, "Arjuna, you shall dwell in me." Arjuna will become identical with Krishna, and the same is true of every sage who has known attainment. In such a state, the teacher's existence merges and his magnificence flows spontaneously like a crystal stream through the disciple's heart. But Arjuna is yet far from that state, and at present he exploits even the teacher's office as a shield to ward off participation in the war.
गुरून् हत्वा हि महानुभावान् श्रेयो भोक्तुं भैक्षमपीह लोके हत्वार्थकामास्तु गुरूनिहैव भुञ्जीय भोगान् रुधिरप्रदिग्धान्.
Even to live in this world as a mendicant begging for alms is better than killing teachers, for if I kill them, all my joys and riches and desires in this world will be drenched in their blood. Arjuna prefers the life of a beggar who lives on alms to killing his teachers, rather than meaning to beg for livelihood, for the sustenance of the body. Begging here denotes soliciting great men through rendering even a half-hearted service to them for the favor of propitious fortune. Food is the only God, after partaking of which the soul's hunger is assuaged forever. That he should, even though in small measures, continue to taste the manna of God's excellence by serving and soliciting a sage, without having to part with his family, is the craving behind Arjuna's tearful appeal. Don't most of us do the same? It is our aspiration that we should gradually, at some point, achieve spiritual liberation without having to destroy the ties of familial love and attachment. But there is no such way for the seeker who has achieved a higher level of accomplishment than this, and is strong enough to face the war raging on the battlefield of his heart. Soliciting and imploring like an almsman, rather than doing something on one's own, is like begging for food like a mendicant. In the Dhammadayad Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya, Mahatma Buddha has also declared the food obtained by begging inferior because it is like flesh received as alms. How will he profit, Arjuna asks, by killing his teachers? What else can the world reward him with for this crime but the unnatural enjoyment of blood-stained pleasures of sensual gratification and material prosperity? It appears from this that he perhaps believes that loving adoration of God will augment his worldly happiness. So his only achievement, even after the most strenuous struggle, he believes, can be nothing more than enjoyment of riches which sustain the body and sensual pleasures. He goes on to make yet another reasoning.
न चैतद्विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जयेयो यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामः तेव स्थिताः प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः.
I hardly know which is better, there the Kauravas conquering us or our conquering them. Even Dhritarashtra's sons, who are our enemies, and yet after killing whom we may not wish to live. Even possession of the hoped-for delights is not assured. Arjuna is at his wit's end as to what course of action can bring him glory, for whatever he has said till now has been proved to be only ignorance. He does not also know whether he will rout the Kaurav army or they will rout him. Dhritarashtra's sons, after slaying whom he should not desire to live, are arrayed against him. What shall he live for if his feelings of attachment represented here by his kinsmen, all of them progeny of Dhritarashtra's ignorance, are destroyed? At the same time, however, it occurs to Arjuna that what he has said now may be also false. So he turns to Krishna again.
कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यच्छ्रेयस्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्.
With my mind swamped with feeble pity and confusion regarding duty, I entreat you to instruct me as to what is definitely conducive to my glory, for I am your disciple and have taken refuge in you. With his heart enfeebled by pity and his mind clouded with infatuation in regard to Dharma, Arjuna begs Krishna to tell him the means that will definitely be the most conducive to what is supremely propitious for him. But why should Krishna do this? According to Arjuna, it is Krishna's duty to show him the right path, because he, Arjuna, is a disciple who has found shelter under him. At this point, Arjuna's surrender is complete. Until now, he had thought himself an equal of Krishna in merit, and in fact, even superior to him in certain skills. But now, he really puts himself at the mercy of his charioteer. An accomplished teacher dwells in his disciple's heart and is always by his side until the goal is reached. If he is not there by his side, the pupil may falter in his quest. Like the guardians of a maiden who protect her till her marriage, an accomplished teacher acts as a charioteer who skillfully maneuvers his disciple's soul safely across the perilous valleys of nature. Arjuna now makes one more submission.
Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyat yacchokamuchoshanamindriyanam avapya bhumavasapatnamriddham rajyam suranamapi chadhipatyam.
I do not see that obtaining an undisputed and profitable dominion over the whole earth, or, for that matter, even lordship over the gods, can cure the grief that is wearing out my senses. Arjuna cannot believe that even a secure and lucrative realm extending across the whole earth, or even an Indra-like lordship over the gods of heaven, can help him get rid of the sorrow that is withering his senses. If his grief is unabated, what shall he do with all these acquisitions? He begs to be excused from fighting in the war if these are to be his only rewards in return. He is utterly disheartened, and he does not know what to say after this.
एवमुक्त्वा ऋषिकेशं गुडाकेशः परन्तप न योत्स्य इति गोविन्दम् उक्त्वा तूष्णीं बभूवः.
Sanjay said, after having thus spoken to Rishikesh, Arjuna, the conqueror of sleep and destroyer of foes, told Govind, Krishna, that he would not fight, and then he fell silent. So far, Arjuna's attitude has been determined by the Puran, which contain ordinances for ceremonial acts and sacrificial rites, as well as the enjoyment of benefits arising from a due performance thereof. In these works, heaven is the ultimate goal. But Krishna later enlightens Arjuna that this line of thought is mistaken.
तमुवाच ऋषिकेशः प्रहसन्निव भारत सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये विषीदन्तमिदं वचः.
Rishikesh then, O Bharat, Dhritarashtra, with a smile as it appeared, spoke thus to him, Arjuna, who sat mournfully between the two armies. Krishna, knower of secrets of the innermost heart, Rishikesh, speaks smilingly to the grieving Arjuna.
अशोचानन्वशोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासून गतासूंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः.
The Lord said, although sorrowing over those who ought not to be grieved for, you yet speak wise words. But the discriminating mourn over neither the living nor those who are dead. Krishna tells Arjuna that while he grieves for those who are unworthy of such grief, he also speaks words of wisdom. But men of discernment mourn neither for those whose souls have departed, nor for the ones who are living. They do not grieve for the living, because they also shall die. That means that Arjuna only talks like a wise man. He does not know the reality, since
नत्वेवाहं जातुनासं नत्वन्नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्.
it is not that either you or I or all these kings did not exist in the past, nor is it that our being will come to an end in the future. It is not, Krishna explains, that he, the accomplished teacher, or Arjuna, the devoted pupil, or all these kings with the vanity that is characteristic of rulers of men, did not exist at any time in the past ages, nor is it that they will cease to be in the ages to come. The accomplished teacher is forever, and so are affectionate disciples, as well as rulers who symbolize the perversions of passion and moral blindness. Here, besides throwing light on the permanence of yoga in general, Yogeshwar Krishna has particularly stressed its existence in the future. Explaining why the dead should not be mourned over, he says,
Dehinosmin yatha dehe Kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara prapti dhirastatra namuhyati.
Since the embodied spirit passes through infancy, youth, and old age in the body, and then transmigrates into another body, men with steadfast minds do not grieve over his passing away. As the embodied soul waxes from childhood to youth, then wanes to old age and assumes one new body after another, wise men are not prey to infatuation. At some time, a man is a boy, and then he grows into a young man. But does he die by this? Then he grows old. The self is ever the same. Only the condition of the physical body in which he resides goes on changing. There is no crack in him when he changes over to a new body. This change from one physical body to another will continue until the soul is united with the Supreme Spirit, who alone is beyond all change.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhada agama payino nitya
There are sensations of heat and cold, and of pain and pleasure, O son of Kunti, as senses meet their objects. Bear them patiently, O Bharat, because they have a beginning and an end, and are transient. The contact of senses and their objects, which generates pleasure and pain, and feelings of cold and warmth, is occasional and momentary. Arjuna should therefore abandon them. But instead of that, he is shaken by the mere thought of pleasures that are derived from the union of senses and their objects. The family for the sake of whom we yearn for pleasures and the teacher whom we revere both represent the attachment of senses. But the causes of this attachment are momentary, false, and perishable. Neither shall our senses always meet with objects they enjoy, nor shall they always be capable of enjoyment. So Arjuna is counseled to give up sensual pleasures and learn to withstand the demands of his senses. But why is Arjuna counseled thus? Is it a Himalayan war in which he has to endure cold? Or is it a desert war in which he has to suffer heat? As knowledgeable people say, the actual Kurukshetra has a moderate climate. During the mere 18 days that is the total duration of the Mahabharata war, is it possible that seasons will change, that winter and summer will come and go? The truth is that endurance of cold and heat, of happiness and sorrow, of honor and dishonor, depends upon the seeker's spiritual endeavor. The Gita is, as we have seen more than once, an externalization of the inner conflict that rages within the mind. This war is the war between the gross physical body and the self, which is aware of his identity with God. It is a conflict in which ultimately even the forces of divinity grow inert after they have subdued unrighteous impulses and enabled the self to become one with God. When there remains no impiety, what else is there for pious impulses to fight? The Gita is thus a picturization of inner conflict that rages within the mind. What advantages, however, will the recommended sacrifice of senses and their pleasures bring? What is gained by this? Krishna speaks of this.
Yam hina vyathayante te purusham purushashava समदुःखसुखं धीरं सोमृतत्वाय कल्पते.
So, O the noblest of men, Arjuna, one who is possessed of equanimity in pain and pleasure, and firm and untormented by these feelings produced by the meeting of senses with their objects, deserves to taste the nectar of immortality. The steadfast man, who regards sorrow and happiness with equipoise, and is not troubled by his senses and their association with objects, is worthy of the state of immortality that realization of the Supreme Spirit brings. Here, Krishna refers to an attainment, namely Amrit, literally the drink of immortality. Arjuna had thought that in return for the war, he would be rewarded with either a heavenly abode or the authority to rule over the earth. But now Krishna tells him that his prize will be Amrit, rather than the pleasures of heaven or earthly power. What is this Amrit?
नासतो विद्यते भावो नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः.
The unreal has no being, and the real has no non-being. And the truth about both has also been seen by men who know the reality. The unreal has no existence, it has no being, and so bringing it to an end is out of the question. On the other hand, there is no absence of the real in all time, past, present, or future. Arjuna then asks Krishna whether he is saying this as an incarnation of God. Krishna's reply to this is that the distinction between the real and the unreal has also been revealed to sages who have realized the true nature of the human soul as identical with the Supreme Spirit pervading the universe. That is to say, that Krishna of the Gita is a seer who has gained an insight into reality. What, after all, are true and false, real and unreal?
अविनाशी तु तद्विद्धि येन सर्वमिदं ततं विनाशमव्ययस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तुमर्हति.
Know that since the Spirit which pervades the universe is imperishable and immutable, no one can effect his destruction. That which spreads through and is present in every atom of the universe is indestructible. No one is capable of destroying the imperishable principle. But what is the name of this deathless Amrit? Who is he?
अन्तवन्त इमे देहा नित्यस्योक्ताः शरीरिणः अनाशिनो प्रमेयस्य तस्माद्युध्यस्व भारत.
Fight, O Bharat, Arjuna, because while the bodies which clothe the soul are said to come to an end, the embodied spirit itself is forever, indestructible, and boundless. Arjuna is exhorted to get up and fight, because all these physical bodies that embody the indwelling, boundless, and eternal spirit are said to be ephemeral. This spirit, the Self, is imperishable, and it cannot be destroyed at any time. The Self is real, whereas the physical body is subject to death, and so unreal and non-existent at all times. Krishna's injunction to Arjuna is, fight, because the body is mortal. But it is not evident from the exhortation whether Arjuna is required to kill only the Kaurav. Are not the men on the side of Pandav also bodies? Are the Pandav immortal? If physical bodies are mortal, who is Krishna there to defend? Is Arjuna not a body also? Is Krishna there to defend that body which is unreal, without being, and unceasing? If it is so, may it not be assumed that he too is ignorant and lacking in discrimination, the power that distinguishes between the visible world and the invisible spirit? Does not he himself say later in the Gita, in chapter 3, verse 13, that the man who thinks of and toils only for the physical body is ignorant and wanting in discernment? Such a wretched man lives in vain. There is also another problem. Who really is this Arjuna? As it was said in chapter 1, Arjuna is an embodiment of affectionate devotion. Like a faithful charioteer, the revered God is always with his devotee. Like a friend, he guides him and shows him the right way. We are not a physical body. The body is a mere garment, a dwelling for the soul to live in. The one who lives in it is the affectionate self. The physical body was some time back called unceasing. Elemental wars and slaughter do not destroy the body. When one body is forsaken, the soul just assumes another body. It is with reference to this that Krishna has said that there is change from one body to another, just as a man grows from childhood to youth and then to old age. If you hack a body to pieces, the soul just puts on another body like a new apparel. The real base of the body is constituted by sanskar, the merits, the influences and impressions earned during a previous existence. And sanskar rests upon the mind. Perfect subjugation of the mind, so that it can be changeless, firm, and constant, and the dissolution of the last sanskar are all different aspects of the same process. The disintegration of the last crust of this sanskar marks the end of physical existence. To bring about this dissolution, we have to undertake aradhana, worship and adoration of the desired God. Krishna has named it action, karma, or the way of selfless action, nishkam karma yoga. In the Gita, he has from time to time urged Arjuna to wage war, but in the entire poem, there is not one verse that supports the idea that its war is a physical war or in any way related to the idea of actual bloodshed. Evidently, this war is the war between the opposed impulses of righteousness and unrighteousness, the forces of piety and those of impiety, that is fought within man's soul, the seat of all thought and feeling.
य एनं वेत्ति हन्तारं यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजानीतो नायं हन्ति न हन्यते.
They are both ignorant, he who believes that the self slays and he who thinks that he is slain. For he neither slays, nor is he slain. He who regards the self as the slayer, and he who regards him as the slain, are both unaware of his real nature. For he neither kills, nor can he be killed. The same point is stressed again.
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
Neither ever born nor dying, neither at any time coming into being nor ceasing to be. The Self is birthless, perpetual, unchanging, and timeless, and he is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. The Self, the God within, is neither at any time born, nor does he at any time die, for what he undergoes in the name of death is a mere change of apparel. He cannot also be anything other than Self, because he is birthless, permanent, eternal, and primeval. Disintegration of the body does not annihilate him. The Self alone is real, timeless, unchanging, and eternal. Who are you? A follower of the Sanatan Dharma? What is forever? The Self. So, you are a follower, a disciple of the Self. The Self and Brahm, God, are synonymous. And who are you? A worshipper of the Sanatan Dharma. What is immutable? The Self, of course. That is to say, that you and I all are adorers of the Self. But if we are not familiar with the spiritual path, the way of following the dictates of the Self until he is one with the Supreme Spirit, we have nothing that is worthy of being described as changeless and everlasting. We are on trial for the final absolution, and in close proximity to God if we pine for him, but we cannot be deemed as having been admitted as long as we are credulous enough to accept blindly one wrong convention or the other, masquerading as Sanatan Dharma. Be it in India or any other country, the soul in all is identical. So if anywhere on the earth there is a man who is aware of the true nature of Self and his ultimate goal, and who is eager to take to the way which will eventually lead his Self to the Supreme Spirit, be he a professed Christian, Muslim, Jew, or anything else, he undoubtedly also belongs to the fold of Sanatan Dharma, the changeless and eternal.
वेदाविनाशिनं नित्यं य एनमजमव्ययं कथं स पुरुषः पार्थ कं घातयति हन्तिकम्.
How can he, O Parth, who is conscious of the soul within as imperishable, permanent, birthless, and immutable, kill or move another to kill? Arjuna is addressed as Parth, for he has made a chariot of the earth-made body and is preparing to take a perfect aim at the Supreme Spirit. The man who knows that the embodied soul is indestructible, permanent, beyond birth, and unmanifest, how can he make others slay or be a slayer himself? Destruction of what is indestructible is impossible. And, being beyond birth, the Self is also never born. So why grieve for the body? This idea is further elaborated in the following verse.
वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान्यन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि.
Like a man who puts on new garments after discarding his worn-out clothes, the embodied self also casts off tattered bodies and transmigrates into other bodies that are new. The soul rejects bodies that have been ravaged by old age or some other disease and dresses himself in new apparel, just as a man throws away old torn clothes and puts on new clothes. But if new clothing is needed only when the fabric of old clothes is weakened, why do young children die? These garments have yet to grow and evolve. It was said a little earlier that the body rests on sanskar, the excellence attained in the course of a previous existence. When the store of sanskar is depleted, the self discards the body. If the sanskar is of 2 days' duration only, the body will be on the brink of death on the second day itself. Beyond sanskar, there is not even a single breath of life. Sanskar is the body, and the self assumes a new body according to his sanskar. According to the Chandogya Upanishad, a man is primarily his will. As is his will in this life, so does he become when he departs from it. It is the firmness of his will in one life that determines what a man will be in the next. Man is thus born in bodies